lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and back with me again. Finally, I have Jen with me. We haven't recorded in, I think, maybe almost a year. I could be wrong. It's probably hasn't been a year, but it's been a while. So I'm so happy to have you back. And we were planning on talking about, I think, her favorite book of all time, maybe one of them, MAUS. And we had kept pushing off recording it for whatever reason, scheduling and stuff. And then kind of interesting that it happened to get banned at a Tennessee school within that time. So the fact that we're doing this episode, we were going to do it anyways, but now we just have completely different angle to come at it with. And I'm really excited to get with you. I realized that I didn't read both books. I had only read one of them. I always thought that I had read it in the complete form, but I read it when it was split in the book 1 and book 2 years ago.
Because it first came out, the one that I shipped you is a slipcase. So basically you have like 2 volumes, and later they came out with a complete MAUS, which is the one that I read. And it's just such an amazing story. For me, it's like my favorite. I'm not into like must-read books. I think I covered that in like few episodes ago, but MAUS is definitely a must-read. This is the only comic books you have to read in your life. It's MAUS. Like there's no other option, because this book is life-changing in terms of like story, but also in literature in general as an art form. It came out as such a strong. There's no other book like MAUS.
No.
So it is the first, and as of now, the only comic book to ever won a Pulitzer Prize. And I think that speaks volume, because a Pulitzer Prize is only it's only awarded to like journalists, right? It's like it rewards the best journalism, like Time magazine and all that stuff. And MAUS is actually the only and first graphic novel to get that prize. And for me, that's like mind-blowing, because in the industry, that's such, I don't know, it's like record breaking, it's incredible.
Well, it's very unique, right?
It's like very unique.
Yeah. I think it's crazy too, because like I also, over the past few years, past couple of years, like watching another YouTube channel called Cartoonist Kayfabe, like I'm learning about like different things, different books, different like formats that have taken place throughout comics history. And they talked about a magazine called Raw Magazine, which is where Art Spiegelman debuted MAUS, and it was serialized. It wasn't released straight as a graphic novel. You had little chunks coming out in each of these issues. And I wish I could get my hands on some of those magazines, because I'm sure there's so many other great stories by great cartoonists in there. But obviously this is the one. This is the story that really stands out. And I think it's because it touches on such an important and horrific moment in history, in human history,
But it is also so brilliant the way that it's written. Clearly, it's not just like taking a real story and writing it down. There is so much thoughts put into this book, in the sense of like the structure, the way that the illustrations, the way that the characters are portrayed. It's so brilliant and smart. And I feel that's where like MAUS really breaks the barrier of like what a graphic novel can actually do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like right off the bat, just the fact that he makes the Jews mice, which is why it's called MAUS, but it's MAUS, and then you have the Nazis are cats, right?
Yeah.
But really, it's what really struck me, is the relationship that he has with his dad. He had and the dad definitely has like these stereotypical, like, I don't know, things that people say about Jews, right? Like stingy kind of stuff. But he also relates that into like, because of what happened to him in the Holocaust, because he lost everything. Everything was taken, not just from him, but millions of Jews, right? So anything that he had to hold on to, right? Whether it was money, or if he had like there's a moment with like he had some leftover cereal, and he fucking takes it back to the store to get, because he's like, well, I'm not going to eat it. I don't want it, so I want something else, And it's just like those little moments, and the relationship with his dad, as his dad is telling him these stories throughout the 2 books, the complete volume. it really struck me, like I never met her, but I had like my great grandma from my mom on my mom's side. She was a Holocaust survivor. She escaped the camp. Her sister didn't, right? But like I didn't ever get to talk to her about these stories. I wish, like, especially reading this, it made me like, fuck, I wish I could kind of I
Yeah.
could have talked to her about those stories. Because I mean, not that it's like, oh man, what happened? Not like that, but just like to hear from somebody that experienced it. And it made me want to do like one of those ancestry things too, to just kind of see like where my family came from. It really pulls on so many different emotions, like reading this, and there's people out there that are like Holocaust deniers, that say it's not even like that. To me, that's, what the fuck are you talking? Like, no, it's fact. I mean, there's some people that are still alive that have the
Yeah.
tattoos with the numbers on their wrists. Um, I just think, like you said, it transcends the comic book, genre. If you want to classify comic books as a genre, it is literature. It should be taught in schools. It should be one of the books that is in curriculum, especially in a history class,
Yeah.
because it comes at it from a completely different angle than just, here are the facts. This is a human experience of somebody that was there and their perspective on what happened. And
Not only that, something that I hear a lot nowadays is people saying it will never happen again. What happened at the Holocaust will never happen again because we know what happened and we know that like it's impossible. We are aware. But the fact is, MAUS proves that it will happen, like it can happen again because
yeah,
it was so sneaky. It explains the way that like all the politics behind it and how like everything, all the event took place and how like this event brought this event that brought this event that brought this event, and then when you read it you realize, shit, like if I was living in that time I would never have seen it coming. Like, and even if it would happen today we would never see it coming because it was so sneaky the way that it happened. For me, one of the most heartbreaking story that I saw in the MAUS is how he explains that at some point they promoted that all the old people over like I think 90 years old had to go live in that, like they would get in the train to go live in that place to take care of their grandparents, like they would get provided with food, medication, like all that like attention that they deserved. But the fact is when they were in that train they were brought straight to concentrate a camp basically. And for me that was like, this is incredible because nobody knew what was happening at that point. People were just thinking that the government was doing their a favor of taking care of their grandparents, right?
yeah.
And it's just so sneaky and so subtle the way that all that politic action happened, that when you were actually living in that time you had no idea what was happening. And like I said, it just proves that it could happen again. And just proves that like people were not dumb. It didn't happen because people were dumb or were unaware or all that stuff. It happened because it was so sneaky.
Yeah, and it was a gradual thing. It wasn't like one day. It
Exactly.
wasn't like one day they just started doing it. I think maybe I wouldn't say, I'm not saying it couldn't happen again, but I think with technology now, maybe it wouldn't have taken as long for it to stop.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't TV. There's a reason why the Vietnam War ended faster. There's people protesting because they were seeing all these people dying and murdering, people that didn't need to be.
But I'm going to bring up another fact. So I was talking about this book in other videos, but there's a comic book that came out, I think 2 years ago. It's called Welcome to the New World. And it explains the story of a Syrian family coming to the United States.
Mhm.
And they explain basically because they were escaping the war in Syria. Some scenes in that book are very similar to scenes in MAUS at the camp. And Welcome to the New World explains a story that happens in the 2020s or something like that. So for me, it's just like, we're not just aware of like what's happening in other countries. It could happen again so easily because it's happening at some point for other countries, like people fleeing the war can actually like relate a little bit to what happened, because some actions and some similarities and the way that the politic is happening is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you have people saying that like the whole vaccination thing
Yeah,
is
that's
like Nazi Germany. And like, I mean, if you look for it, I guess you could find similarities, but I mean, it's definitely nowhere. I don't know. I don't think you can compare it to something that
no,
was like where people were taken into fucking chambers and fucking burned alive, or where, you know,
exactly.
like they were locked up in camps. It's not the same, but I get, you know, you're right that it could happen, but I just, I don't know. I don't necessarily think it could happen on that scale, right? Like that was a massive. This dude,
This is massive.
this
Yes.
guy took over countries. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
slowly over time. And I would hope that people aren't that fucking ignorant that they would blindly follow some fucking psychopath. You know?
I don't think it was ignorance, more fear of, because if you were against, there was no neutral. It was you were in favor or against it, and if you were against it, you would die. Basically, that's just what happened. And like plenty of families put their life in danger. Just in MAUS, the fact that they sent their kids away to like strangers,
Yeah, I
just
know.
so the kids could escape the horror. They basically gave their kids to strangers just to escape the camp.
I know.
That's crazy.
I was reading that scene and I was trying to relate to it. Like, I mean, I didn't want to because it was like a horrific thought in my mind, but I'm like, what would I have done? And I can't even imagine that. I can't even imagine what was going through anybody. And then that was just one example. And that wasn't the only person that did it, but like just thinking about like, I'm sending my kid away and then you never see them again.
And you don't even know the person. Like you take a stranger and like, here's my kid, deal with it. Like you don't even know that person.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy. I mean, it's just crazy what people had to do just to survive and just to potentially save their family members.
Another great thing about MAUS for me that I really loved about this book is that it proved that it wasn't a matter of intelligence of how smart you were. It's a matter of dumb luck. You were either surviving or not. It wasn't if the people who survived were not the smartest because they did not use their intelligence to survive. It was just dumb luck. You could have been like shot dead right there, here and there, and like nobody would have asked questions. You know, it's just being at the wrong time, being at the wrong place at the wrong time. And a perfect example of that in MAUS is when he's in line to do like, they're basically doing like health checkups to see like who can work, who cannot, and basically like separating people. And he said that the line next to, like, he was made to change line at the last minute, and he realized later that the guy, the doctor at the top of the line was Dr. I can never pronounce his name, Menjigaius or something like that, the crazy horrible doctor that did crazy horrible experiences. And he escaped that table from like a matter of like seconds, just pure dumb luck. He could have been like with that doctor for the rest of his, you know, it's incredible to see how it's just a matter of being at the wrong place at the wrong time. There was no other way to escape this.
Yeah, I mean, I think too the experience of Art Spiegelman's dad, like, just, this wasn't over a span of days. It wasn't a span of weeks. It was years that he was surviving and doing whatever he had to just to get through, you know, whether it was saving bread to barter with people, you know, to get something. Or I think there was the moment with like the blankets, or not the blankets, the jackets with the lice in it or something like that.
Yeah.
And like just constant, man, or trying to send messages to his wife that he was separated from, that was in a completely different camp. You know, just, I don't know, it's a very powerful
story. His wife's story is a complete other level of like sadness when you realize, because they talk about the mom a little bit. We never the story is really focused on the dad, but we can see glimpses of the mom's life, and I don't want to like give it away, but basically it doesn't end well for her, but not the way that you think it ends when you read MAUS, and you just realize how like the extent of what happens and the extent of the intelligence of this book, like the way that it's written, it's just so well done, you know. And I really love how you read a chapter and it's basically the story of the dad at the camp, or however it happens back then, and then you read the next chapter. Sorry, it always starts with the dad telling the story.
Yeah.
Then it's the story itself, and then the chapter ends, and it's the like you're back to the dad and son. It's like always like present, past, present, because you need those cuts in the story to really absorb the information. Because if it was just a full-on like story about the past, it would be too heavy. So Art Spiegelman was able to like cut the story down for us reader to really absorb whatever was said and really like understand where the dad came from and where he is now. And that, I thought that's brilliant, and it's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you also see the relationship change as he continues to learn more about his dad, you know, where he has this almost like he finds his dad kind of annoying, you know.
Yeah.
But then as he's hearing more, like he just becomes so enthralled with this story that he now wants to tell it. And I do wish that, you know, and I'm not trying to spoil anything, but like the journals of his mom.
Yeah.
I like, it made me like, fuck. I wish he, like, I kept hoping, like, is he actually, like, as I'm reading, is he gonna find them so we can kind of like get the her story kind of deal. But I do think that it's one of the most powerful books in general that I've ever read. I wouldn't even just say powerful comics, just one of the most powerful pieces of literature, because it just pulls on so many different emotions, and it just makes you think so much about your relationships with even just your family. Like I said, like making me think like, what would I have done in this situation, or appreciating your parents for what they've gone through and their struggles in life, whether it's a Holocaust survivor or not, whether it's just, you know, you don't necessarily have to be a Holocaust survivor, but just to appreciate your parents and the struggles they went through to make sure that you could have a good life. For
me, the fact that MAUS was banned like a few weeks ago from school for it, and I quote, inappropriate content, nudity, and
the language, right? I think
language, like curse words, because it says the word bitch at some point. I'm like, you do realize that you're banning this book based on the word bitch and like nudity, but it's a book about Holocaust. Like, what you find the most horrible about this book is the word bitch and nudity.
Dude, you can
it's a book about Holocaust.
Yeah, but you can go on regular TV. You don't even need to go to HBO or Showtime anymore. You can go to any, and you will hear the word bitch. They don't censor that shit, you know. And there's way worse things that you could see on the news than you're gonna see in this book, you know.
Yeah, and I don't know, I was flabbergasted. This triggered me so much. If you follow me on Instagram, like I think I've talked about this for like an entire week.
Yeah, you did.
Like, I couldn't even understand how people could take this book and think it's inappropriate. Like, for me, I still don't understand to this day, because this book should be read by everyone.
Yeah.
It's just, it talks about such a heavy subject in such an amazing way, and it tells actual facts, make it human. Like you said, it's a human experience. It's not just like opening in a history book and seeing basically like a map of the world and seeing like what happened where. It's an actual human experience, and it just makes it real. Like I said, people think that it could never happen again, but the fact is, like, when you think like that, it's because you think that it's so far away, it's such from a long time ago, but it is not from such a long time ago. Art Spiegelman is still alive to this day, and he wrote this story about his dad. It's 2 generations ago, not even, you know. And people don't realize that. So that's why this book should be in every school, to understand that it wasn't that long ago, and it wasn't the way that it didn't happen the way that you think. it happened, like you said, over years. It happened with little adjustments here and there. And it started with a star put on your coat. It started with like you had to identify yourself to go to the store. You had to like just sneaky things like that. And then it just got more and more and more until the point of non-return.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, the minute I saw that it was banned, the first person I thought it was you. You know, like I was like, oh, I wonder how she's gonna react to this. You know, and
I
I'm
lost
like,
my shit.
and it's not even just you, right? It's the entire comic book community.
Yeah.
Like Rob Liefeld talked about it on his podcast, and he wasn't even doing an episode about MAUS, but he brought it up and how ridiculous it is and how much censorship and in turn the cancel culture has been, how negative it is, and how much it can take away from really good.
And you know what I've read?
Work.
I've read an article saying that most teachers who were part of that boarding process never read MAUS.
Yeah, it's just, to me, it's ignorance. You know, like it's like, well, what else are you going to ban? You know, from that point, you're just going to keep banning stuff. I think Brian K. Vaughan even shared that there's somewhere that why the last man is banned. Why? I just, it doesn't make sense to me to ban this. Look, if you want to ban a book like Mein Kampf, you know, Hitler's book, that makes sense because it is a book of hate. You know, I can understand that, but even then, it's like, well, where's the freedom of speech, the freedom of all this, right? Like,
but not just that. If you ban that book, how can you understand what went through his head? Like, if you don't want this to ever happen again, you have to understand it to its core. And this, like Mein Kampf, is the best way to understand it to its core, to understand what happened in someone's mind to want to exterminate like everybody. Like,
yeah, I don't know that I mean, I guess you're right. I can't personally put myself in the headspace to read that book. You know what I mean? Like,
obviously.
I don't think I could ever do it. But yeah, I understand, like, you need to know where you came from to not repeat same, you know, past mistake, right?
And MAUS is the starting point. It explains everything. Like, if you ban MAUS, you're basically like trying to erase whatever happened, and that's very dangerous.
Yeah, and he does it, but and like the thing is it the way he depicts it, he does it in such a eloquent and like thoughtful way that it's not, to me, it's not very graphic. I mean, dude, it could have been. It very well could. It could have been a very graphic book, very horrific. He gets right on the verge of the horrors of what was happening without really going full force and showing you some of the stuff that was really bad. You know, like, yes, there's a lot of, you know, scenes in the book that will make you sad, will make you sympathetic and stuff like that, but never does it get so graphic. I mean, there's no nudity in it. You know what I mean? Like, well, it's also mice and cats, so everybody's an animal. So it was also an interesting choice for him to do that, right? I think that kind of helps soften the story to where it's not, I don't know how to describe what I'm thinking, but it doesn't make it as horrific because it's coming from that angle and it's not depicting actual.
It puts some distance between reality and the reader. It puts a distance, but a comfortable distance, in the sense that you're not removing anything from what happened, but you're just putting the reader in a comfortable space enough for the reader to be able to finish that book. Although it's hard, you can still finish it. Like, the emotional heaviness of it is well balanced. Again, with the way that it's written, like the chapters break, the fact that it's like animals, and just like the dialogues as well, like the way that the story is told. It's very soft and gentle and simple. It's easy to understand. There's no big words. There's no like historical big facts that dates and whatever that you get lost and you don't understand. It's just so simple and straight to the point with such like a comfortable distance that makes it such a good tool for schools, like even younger. Like I've read a lot of people reviewing MAUS saying that they were reading this with their kid. you know, like when
Yeah.
their kids are in age to understand, they read that book with their kid to explain historical facts, but also like it's a good way to bring explanation of like how hate is a powerful emotion and how you have to be careful and all that stuff, you know?
Yeah, I think it's kind of ironic that a school banning it made so many people pick it up for the first time too.
Yeah.
You know, like the sales, I think it was like #1 in graphic novels.
And that's just that. Bookstore were making it available for free for like online. You could read it for free. If they had like if they were part of a school district, they could get a free copy of MAUS if they were going to certain bookstore. Parents bought MAUS for their kids to read at home, and it just became a whole like movement, you know, a whole like event, because it's so surprising that they would do that, you know?
Yeah, it's just you have to think like where does this kind of censorship stop? You know, if you're banning a comic book that's depicting historical facts, even though it's, you know, it kind of takes a little bit away from reality, having it be cartoon animals and stuff like that. But what else are you gonna ban? You know, I where does it stop? It's kind of like when we talked about cancel culture too. You know, it's like it has to just end at one point. I think that I know that it's completely different. It's not like I know cancel culture usually stems from people online being like, oh, this person did that. But censorship, I think, it's always been something that comic books have dealt with. I mean, you look at the Comics Code Authority, but they completely like dumbed down comic books, you know, like you couldn't do certain things and like Marvel and DC were the main ones, but you look at like the EC comics and like what they were depicting, yeah, it was horror and whatever, but you couldn't, like, this wouldn't have got the Comics Code Authority, this book wouldn't have got that stamp. And I think that, you know, you don't do it with novels, so don't do it with comics, you know, is my kind of thing. I'm kind of curious, what else did this Tennessee school district ban, you know?
It just reminds me, in history, some novels were banned for inappropriate content, like Catherine's Rye and all that stuff. But to this day, these books are part, like I've read them in school. Like all those books, those novels that were banned previously, I read them in school. They were part of my curriculum. I just think that we are in 2022 now. Ooh, like, should we know better? At this point, shouldn't we know that? Plus, like I said, MAUS is not just an important comic book. It's actually the only comic book to ever win a Pulitzer Prize. Like, it's a milestone in literature. If you teach literature, you should teach MAUS. It's like a historical comic book.
Yeah, I think it's just, I don't like it. For me, I don't see a scenario where any book should get censored, especially if you're winning awards. Like, obviously it's an important piece of history, you know. I mean what other Pulitzer Prize book have you heard of being banned? I can't think of one. So I think that this is one of, if not the most important, you know, comic books to ever be produced. You know, I think that Art Spiegelman is one of the greatest cartoonists of, you know, his generation. I mean, he's still with us, you know, he's only 73. So he's not that old. And like you said, it's depicting stuff that is not even that far away from, you know, like there's people still alive that survived in the Holocaust. I mean, obviously they're elderly, right? They're probably in their 90s, but
they're still there.
But they're still here, you know? And I think that this is, I mean, they taught it in my school, you know. I think it was in high school that the history teacher was, I think even though it got banned in that district, I think it got people talking about it again. So even though some, you know, you could take the negative and it turned into a positive because people are buying it and talking about it again. Whereas, I mean, you and I talked about it recently, but it's not like I was hearing people talk about the book, you know. So now it's back in the public conscience, and maybe this brings new readers. Maybe this will get people to like fight against that type of censorship because of what they saw, you know.
I don't know, it's such it's such a horrible, I don't know, for me it's such a horrible event. Like I said, it really triggered me, and I just can't get over the fact that that happened. And I think everybody should read MAUS. I think not only for the story, like whatever's inside, but just for what it represents. And if you like graphic novel, you have to read MAUS for what this graphic novel represents in the industry. And like I said, it's so brilliant. You could do a complete analysis of it, and every page you'll see like something incredible to analyze. There's so much thoughts put into this book. It's mind-blowing.
It's one of my favorite comic books I've ever read, for sure. I know, like I said, I can't believe I didn't read the second part. Like, I always thought that I did. And it just, in my mind, I told myself, oh yeah, you've read it all. And I realized that after I got through the first half of the book, I'm like, oh shit, no, I don't remember any of this. And there was even some parts of the first part that I couldn't remember because it's been so long. But
yeah, I think it's nice also to find it in like 2 volumes, because it breaks the story in half. In the sense of, I've read it in like only one complete, like
that's the one. That's the one you sent me, was a complete.
Yeah, but in the slipcase, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's like before he went to the camp, and the second part is while he was at the camp. And I think that's an interesting way to cut the story in half. And in school, you could decide to just teach one or the other, like you don't have, basically, it's such a good tool. It's a useful tool, and that's why, like, I'm still shocked that some school don't understand the power of books and how to use those books to actually teach things to kids.
That's why you have good teachers and you have shitty teachers. You have teachers that are doing it for the paycheck, which they don't really get paid that much anyway. But I mean, you could tell. I could always tell.
Yeah. And I was happy to see Comic Store stepping up and offering copies for students. I thought it was interesting to see that like community in the industry, to see like the support from Comic Store being like, no, you have to read this book. I'm going to make it available for you. I think that's such a genuine action, and they were not even making money out of it. Most comic store were having free copies. If you were able to prove that you were going that school district or whatever, you had free copies. So it's not even they were not even doing this for the money and the hype. They were doing this because they genuinely thought that this book should be read. And I think as a community, like the industry, we should be more like that. We should be more happy to share those stories with readers. And we talked about growing readership in some videos. And I think that's an amazing way to bring people in. My favorite type of comic books and graphic novels are nonfiction. And I think nonfiction is an entire part of the industry that can bring people in and hook with the comic book genre. Like, they can get hooked in graphic novels with just the nonfiction, because you are talking to schools, students, people who want to know about historical facts. And I don't know, for me, it's just this whole movement and this whole event of like banning MAUS, like you said, seeing the positive, right? It just opened the door to like getting that getting strangers and welcoming them into the graphic novel industry.
Yeah, because some of these people that are reading about this or watching about this banning, maybe they're not even comic book readers, but they're like, well, now I want to see,
Exactly.
like why is this banned? I got to know more. And then maybe that leads them down to checking other stuff out.
And I have a friend. So when we decided to record this video, I was like, let me just reread MAUS like again, because maybe I missed something the first 3 times I've read it. So I was reading it with a friend. We were going to Toronto, so we were in the train. So I was reading it, like this, and my friend was like on my shoulder, and she was reading it with me, and she was reading it for the first time. And she's not into graphic novels or anything like that. She's not a big reader of any type of books. And she was like hooked by that story. Like, we didn't get to finish it because the train ride stopped. But she was like, Jen, you really like need to lend me that book, because I really want to read it, and I want to read it to my son. And I was like, yeah, no problem. That's how like just MAUS is just such an incredible story that you just get hooked by it, you know, like you really get lost in that story because it's so amazing and you understand so much of the world just by reading it.
Yeah, I think it's just a very important book. And I think that anybody, you know, if you're listening or watching and you're checking out the video and you haven't read it yet, go pick it
Do
up.
it.
You know, I think that if you're seeing all this stuff in the news about it, like there's a reason. I mean, usually when you hear about something being banned, usually that means you need to check it out.
Yeah.
You know, that to me, that's like the first thing, you know, like I got to read this now because I got to see why did you ban it? Why is it causing this much of a stir, you know? But it shouldn't be banned. It should be read everywhere. I think it should be part of, you know, middle school or high school curriculum. I can't remember exactly where they teach that part of history. I think it's middle school where they go over World War II.
Doesn't matter. It should be available everywhere.
Yeah, but I think it's just such an important piece of comic book history as well. And yeah, I love the book. I'm kind of glad we kept pushing off recording because, you know, we wouldn't have been able to talk about this whole being banned thing if we had already recorded the episode. So I think it's it's a great book. I really love the book. I think it's, you know, there's so many aspects of it that I love, but what I really think is, you know, interesting is, you know, because it's in black and white, it feels like it's older than it is because the book is not old, you know, but it definitely has that old feel to it. And I just think this is the type of book you could give, you know, your kid when they're learning about it in history. Oh, you want to see a different aspect of that? Well, you can give them this. And I don't think there's nothing about it to me that I think is inappropriate for a child. Nothing.
Yeah, and like you just reminded me that it's in black and white, yes, but the style is also very simple. I mean, let's be honest, it's not the best drawings in the world. It's not the most precise. It has such a specific style that gives that extra charm to it. The fact that it's like really like it's almost seems like it was like quickly drawn on the side of the table, you know, like it almost has that, I don't know, that authenticity to it in the drawings because it seems so simple and so like the focus is not on the illustrations. The focus is really on the story and the writing, and it's just another level of graphic novel that we don't really see maybe anymore in the industry. Like I feel like now we focus a lot on the illustrations and the way that the graphic is drawn, whether that like MAUS is more focused on the actual story itself. You know, like I'm guilty of that. Like when I pick up a comic book, the first thing I see is the art. I see if like I like the art of the book. But with MAUS, it's so simple, you might not like it, and there's a lot of text, but that's just the charm of it, you know?
Yeah, I also love any book that's a singular vision, where it's the writer, he's a writer, he's an artist, he's a letterer, he's everything for the book, you know? It's why I've really like grown attached to like creators like Jim Rugg, Ed Piskor, Jeff Lemire is another one, you know, Matt Kint. I mean, I could keep going. Like there's so many cartoonists out there, and when I classify as cartoonist, it's somebody that, you know, does the writing and the art. And I think Art Spiegelman just like you get it, just the cohesiveness is just always there. You can never fully get that with two separate people. You can have a pair that really works well together, you know, but I think that when you have that singular vision, you create something that's special. And that's what he did.
Yeah, it's really an open door to his world and his mind and his memories and his family. It's very authentic and very like genuine, but also like intimate. It's very intimate.
Yeah. Well, that's all. I mean, that's all I have on the book. I don't have anything else to share other than I think
I think
be read by everyone. Yeah. I think everybody should pick it up. And I'm so glad that we did this video, man. I'm really, really happy we were able to finally get together and talk about it and talk about how stupid it was that it was banned.
Yeah, I'm so happy. It's such my favorite book. I think everybody should read it. Like I said, I'm not big on must read, but MAUS is a must read. And I'm just so happy that we get to talk about it. I feel I want to see more people talk about it. So if you read MAUS, please like share what you think about it, talk about it. Like that's just the point, you know, like just post it on your stories, share, do a YouTube video, like share it on Facebook. No matter what, just talk about it because this book is so worth it.
I agree. If you're not already following us, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at The Comic Lounge. Make sure you follow Jen at Life of Geeking Mind. She also has a YouTube channel. Is it Life of Geeking Mind as well?
It is.
Okay. Life of Geeking Mind on YouTube. And I'll throw all the links down below. And on that note, we're out.